Hey guys, my name is Warren Holder with Raised Hunting, and in this video, we're gonna go over how I killed my second biggest deer ever. His name was Magnum. He's a 176-inch deer. And the whole goal of this video is not to tell you how great of a deer hunter I am or anything like that. It is hopefully to help you. So we're gonna go through step by step everything that went into killing this deer and what worked, what didn't work, and just lay out exactly how it happened. And the hope is that you'll be able to take something from this piece of information and apply it to your situation and hopefully come out with your biggest deer ever. So with that being said, let's start diving into this here. So the story of Magnum starts back in November 17th of 2021. The very first time that I saw this deer was with at the time it was my girlfriend, now she's my wife, and we were sitting about right here. So the interesting part of this, one disclaimer real quick, this piece of property is not the actual property that I killed him, okay? Looks somewhat similar, but we have to use a piece of property so that we can display something. Please don't go harass this person. We've had people call us before and be like, hey, that's my property. You guys hunting my property? No, we're not hunting your property, okay? We just have to have something to be able to pick this here. So it's as close to the real thing as I can get it for you. Anyways, back to the beginning here. November 17th, 2021, in the morning, very first time that I ever saw this deer. Couldn't believe it. Absolute tank walks up over this hill. We were sitting right there. He was about right here. Now, the interesting part of this, I'd had a trail camera that was on a scrape about right there that had been just fire, absolutely hot for the entire month of October, even into early November. They were just absolutely crushing it. Even September, they were hitting this thing. And I never had a single photo of that deer there. And this deer was, at that time, he was mid-70s. He might have even been 180 then. He didn't grow that much when I killed him. Was not a single photo on that camera. Alyssa and I are sitting there, see him in the morning, managed to get out, came back in the afternoon, see him again. That part's not all that crazy to have a new deer in November in Iowa, right? Well, the crazy part is then we saw him again the next morning out of the same stand. So now I moved the stand. Then we saw him again 2 mornings later on the 21st, we see him. And now I'm kind of wondering, like, this deer seems to be here all the time. Still not a single photo from that original spot on that camera, not one photo. So now is what I'm wondering is this deer actually live here and there's just like some invisible border that he won't cross? And so I decided I'm going to move that camera. So actually I left that camera there, I just added one. So I added a camera right here and ended up getting pictures of him almost on a daily basis. Daylight photos of him going through this area all the time. So now I was like, I'm convinced that this deer absolutely lives here. But for whatever reason, there's this invisible line where he just doesn't go any further south than that. So I believe that he lives in this area right here. Anyways, shotgun season rolls around. I'm hoping he's going to survive. Fortunately, he did. He makes it. And so now I'm wondering, am I going to get photos of him afterwards? I do. The only reason I knew he was alive after shotgun season is I saw him. And then, but not in a hunting scenario. Then I got photos of him all the way through January. So obviously I tried to find his sheds, no luck. But to me, that then said, okay, this area right here, this deer lives here in fall. The question is when does he move in? Is he a homebody all the time? Is he come here just for the rut? Is he come here in mid-October? And so obviously now this deer is on my mind because I know he's a tank. And if he was young at all, I felt as though he was going to grow and just be an absolute tanker. So I decided that he was going to be the #1 target. And I decided that for 2 reasons. One, I had some information on him. 2, the way that this property laid. So it kind of made an L like this. This timber here expanded just a little bit further. And so what I loved about that was if this deer truly, if this whole thing here was truly his core area, then what that meant to me is that killing him was just going to be a matter of time, because it's kind of kind of a funnel almost anywhere you go, and it's going to be a little bit tighter in there, and it's going to be more difficult for him to slip away. The other thing I loved about it was, if I could zoom Onyx out for you on this, I can't because we have to screen record it, but if I could, you'd see that there's really not any other significant timber for over a mile away. So if he was going to be bedding somewhere else, he was having to go a pretty significant jaunt to go be in any other timber or be off of that property. So that just to me said he's going to even spend more time here. So once I decided that, then it was time to try and find him. So as the summer comes around, I put out cameras in various locations. I'll mark those now. So I put cameras here. I put a camera here, back at the same spot. I put a new one here, and then a new one here. So now this one and this one end up being very key locations. The key thing about this one here was I called that Magnum bedroom. And the reason I called it that is because from the time that we spent hunting him in 2021, when my wife was trying to kill him, we sat there for 5 or 6 times, and I saw him 4 or 5 days in a row, and he was always right in that area all the time. So I felt as though like that is his central area, that is his core. And then after shotgun season, he ended up not quite in that same spot, but not very far to the north. So anyways, all through the summer, never get a photo of him. I still wasn't too nervous about it. I felt as though he was going to come back, but I was getting a little more nervous as I'm wondering, when is he going to come back? I'm hoping it's not going to be in November. Well, sure enough, deer season gets here. Ours in Iowa opens October 1st. Still no pictures of Magnum. October 2nd, I get a notification on my phone. I check my phone at 6:21 a.m. 6:21, I get the very first photo of Magnum right there. So what had happened is they cut the corn over here, and I don't know if that was just a coincidence or if they cut the corn and then he had to move back and that's what brought him there. But that first photo was him hitting my rub tree with our Race Sense Buck Junkie on it at 6:21 in the morning. What that said to me is this deer is going to be bedding near here, and he's here in the daylight, and I believe that he is here now. I believe that from that point on, he is on this farm, and I have a chance of killing him at any point. The thing that I absolutely loved about it was October 2nd, which meant that I had lots of time. To me personally, the ideal time to kill a deer is any time before November 2nd. So if I have a deer that I've deemed is the size that I want to kill, or he's the age I want to kill, meets any of the parameters that I want to try to harvest that deer, then I've decided personally, I put in all of my chips to try and kill that deer before November 2nd. I would rather run him out of that area and know that I put in everything I had before November 2nd than be too not aggressive enough and he ends up somewhere during the rut and gets killed, or just I can't find him after that. It seems as though ever getting them on any kind of consistency after the rut until it gets to almost late season is extremely difficult. So I didn't want to let that happen. And so I was excited now that for me, everything was lining up in the way that I was seeing this. So Eli and I had kind of already decided that we were going to go ham after this deer. And the way that we were going to do it, since we really didn't know a lot about him still, was we were going to be really mobile. We were going to use our saddles and we were going to be mobile about trying to get on this deer, and we were going to just adjust, hunt him as much as we could, and we would just adjust based on the wind, because I felt as though if he's there, he is going to stay there and there's not going to be any reason for him to leave. As long as we don't bump him numerous times, we'll be okay. October 8th was the very first sit that we had for him, and I ended up getting a picture of him in Magnum bedroom on one of my rub posts. So Eli and I were actually sitting up here. I didn't have my phone that morning, so when we got out of the truck, I checked my phone, and I had tons of pictures to go through, so it took me a while, right? But I didn't get to my pictures, and there he is. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We missed him by a few hundred yards. But he was there, so I wasn't too concerned by any stretch. So now that I knew he was there and he was in Magnum bedroom, and I had a daylight photo of him, that was the first daylight picture of him I'd had that year. 6:21 a.m. on the 2nd of October was otherwise the closest. So after that, Eli and I said, you know, there's no reason for us now to be conservative. He's here. We had him there in daylight. Every opportunity where the weather's right, we're still not going to go crazy yet, but as long as the weather's right and everything is okay, we're going to try him. And so the next opportunity that came around, now we were hunting him more than that, but the next time that we were sitting there and able to put a move on it was October 14th. We had a west wind, and we set up about right there. Now, the reason we set up right there, we were about 25 yards inside of the timber, is I felt as though he was in Magnum bedroom somewhere and that he was going to come out of there. We've got like a north wind, northwest wind, which puts it blowing out into this field here. I believe he's bedded right back here behind us somewhere. Honestly, I thought he was going to come by like this right here and walk right by us on the way out to the field. Well, he didn't. He actually came out of the field and then down the field. And the reason that was a problem is our wind was blowing right out here. In my initial plan, we were going to kill him before he could wind us. So he was with another really nice deer. See that deer first, and this was 10 minutes before dark, maybe even 5. I mean, well before end of shooting light. What? I see him. You see him? That deer gets past and he's a little nervous but doesn't freak out. Well, then Magnum is at 40 yards. 40 yards broadside. If it was open, I could have shot him. October 14th, though, there's a lot of foliage here in Iowa still. No window, nothing ethical, could not get an arrow in there. Had I set up on the edge of that field, we would have killed him on October 14th, and I'd have shot him at 20 yards right in the edge of the field. The thing that I would do differently now is I would not, me trying to guess the trail that he was going to come out of, in hindsight, me trying to say that he's going to come out of here and I'm going to guess the trail was not very bright. I would have instead set up on the edge of the field, especially with the foliage the way that it was, so that I could shoot out into that field in the event that he came out from there. And even if he did come out on the trail that I thought he was going to, I would have been able to still shoot him from the field edge because he would have popped out in front of me. So why I cut myself off like that, I don't know. But I can tell you from that point on, Eli and I did not sit in that tree anymore. We were on the edge. So after that, we sat several more times. Did not have really any encounters or anything with him until actually no more encounters with him until I killed him on October 29th. So October 14th and October 29th are the only 2 encounters. I had pictures several times within there, mostly right here and in Magnum bedroom. So we were confident he was there. It was just a matter of time. October 24th was the last picture that I'd had of him. And honestly, at this point now, I really didn't care about the photos too much because I knew he was there. I knew he wasn't going to go anywhere. As long as we didn't bust him too much and really put a ton of pressure on him, I felt as though he was going to be there and we were going to kill him. So then is what ended up happening is this day on the 14th, he did wind us here. That buck winded us, ran out in the field, didn't go crazy. I mean, he blew once, but didn't act, super spooked. But going off of what I'd seen already and the amount of time he was spending in there, I felt as though he was going to be back. I really didn't think that he was going to leave. A lot of people would probably tell you that's a mature deer, it's a big deer, and he winded you, you're toast. He's going to leave, he's never coming back. Good luck. And I just don't believe that on a deer that when they are spending a lot of time in an area and they're pretty comfortable there, I think you could actually bust them 2 or 3 times before they're going to do that. And in this instance, he didn't seem that confident in what he had smelled. And so I didn't really think that it was too big of a concern. So now the winds had been mostly out of the north. So with that being said, Eli and I were spending about 80% of our time just south of where I'd previously seen him. So that first red dot there is where I'd previously seen him the year before. So Eli and I spent most of our time right there. And we honestly just we weren't even seeing many deer. But I'd seen him do it the year before so many times, and it's a pretty good funnel there that I was confident at some point he's going to do it. So I don't know what day it was, maybe day 3 or 4 of sitting in this same little area here and not seeing hardly any deer. Eli and I started talking about it, and I was like, man, maybe we need to just adjust, and we just need to hunt deer. So we went from hunting solely Magnum to, hey, we just need to get around deer again, be seeing deer, figure out where they're at, what food sources they're hitting, where they're bedding, change it up a little bit, and we can get back in the game. So we did that, and was it that afternoon that we moved? Okay, so I think it was that afternoon, actually, we moved up to the north side of the farm, hunted a portion up there, and actually had a absolute tanker come underneath us. If Magnum wasn't there, I'd have shot this deer every day of the week. Beautiful 8, super nice 8, comes right underneath us. I chose to pass him, saw lots of other bucks, lots of deer. We're like, okay, we're in the deer now. So now a goofy thing happened on October 28th. We actually had an east wind. And with that being said, that's very odd for us in Iowa, but it was actually pretty good for our situation. So keep in mind here, we believe that Magnum was somewhere in here, in Magnum bedroom, and an east wind to be blowing like this. And we found now that most of the deer are up here in this area. So Eli and I decided the next morning we're going to go in early. We're going to get set up on the west side of this pinch point here, kind of, on this, close to that corner, this corner here. And so we get all of our stuff, we get out early, we get in the trees, and it's dark, obviously, and so we're having a hard time figuring out where we're going to set up our saddles and stuff. And we felt as though it was pretty tight, but we weren't quite sure how tight it was. We're having a very difficult time finding a good tree. And so finally we said, okay, well, we're just going to set up because it's getting close to light and we don't want to screw this up. Well, we ended up in a tree about that big around. I mean, you sneezed and this thing was all over the place. And we were both nervous about it. And it was terrible sit as far as we busted so many deer, like probably 15 deer, 20 deer, and we couldn't shoot more than 3 or 4 yards. I mean, even if we had seen Magnum, we couldn't shoot him. There's no way. I mean, we did have one little buck that actually walked through the one window that I had at like 4 yards, which was incredible in itself. But so that would be a tip I'd have for you. If you're mobile hunting, don't go set up somewhere in the dark that you've never been before. If you're not pretty confident it's going to be somewhat open, because you may have a really, really difficult time having the ability to shoot anywhere or do anything you may just cause more harm than good. So what Eli and I decided was the next morning was also supposed to be an east wind. So we decided that we would get out early since we were doing nothing but hurting things, and we would go and look for trees for the next morning, which we ended up finding a tree right here on the edge and right here on the edge near the top of Magnum bedroom. And so this was really only about probably 150 to 200 yards from the center of Magnum bedroom. And we go back the next morning. Our thought is that Magnum was going to come from anywhere out here, and that he was going to walk through and hopefully come by us in the timber. That was the thought process. And that an east wind would be blowing out here, we would be in the money. It would be perfect setup if we stayed on the edge. So we found those 2 trees. We ended up picking out this one right here. This is going to be the spot, and we'll sit here the next morning. So October 29th comes around, nice, cool morning, super calm. Eli and I go right to the tree and get set up, get all of our stuff put up. I literally finished screwing in ozonics, and then I hit the on button, and I hear something walking. And I look to my right, and I literally about, you know what, myself, because I'm like, oh my God, I just see this one monster side, and it's Magnum, and he's right there. He's like 90 yards away at this point, and he's coming right towards us. He walks right up this edge and then quarters like he's going to go across this pasture, and I shoot him at 14 yards from right there. Meh.
He was behind the tree, but I got as good as I can, dude.
Dude, I think you smoked him, didn't I?
Dude, that's him. I am shaking so bad.
Did that just freaking...
Holy...
Dude, did I hit him good?
I couldn't tell he was behind a limb.
Oh my god.
Dude.
Oh my god.
Dude, what just happened? What just happened?
That was freaking him.
That was Magnum.
So the funny thing about it is, here we thought he was going to come from anywhere up here, anywhere out in that area. No, exact opposite. Doesn't come from anywhere near there. Comes from over here somewhere, and then comes right up to us. But was close enough to Magnum bedroom still that he came out 15 yards, gave us a perfect shot, and I smoked him. The other interesting thing about this exact scenario was that it was so early that the wind hadn't actually really started blowing yet. And so the wind was actually pretty much dead at his back. It was like southwest. So our wind was blowing right up where we wanted him to come from, and not out in the pasture, which is good because east wind, he might have winded us before we would have had a chance to get an arrow in him. But that's another interesting thing, because you hear people tell you that a deer will never, ever, ever travel with the wind at its back. Well, that was a 176-inch, 5.5-year-old deer that was traveling with the wind smack dab at his butt. I mean, could not have been hitting him more in the rear, and yet he was doing that. He was comfortable where he was and confident in where he was going. So even if he'd had an east wind, it wouldn't have helped him. At least in our scenario, I think we would have been able to kill him before he would have had the opportunity to wind us. So the point in all this, I guess, if there's a few things that I would tell you were key takeaways from what I learned with Magnum. Number one, I believe certain deer have zones, and then of those certain deer, it's a lot tighter zone than you may think. And so with that being said, like, I believe that this right here was where Magnum spent 85 to 90% of that deer's time. And I could be completely wrong, but I feel as though that's pretty close. I mean, he was there all the time. And so the interesting thing with this, like I said before, I had a camera right there within 123 yards of where I saw him 6 times. Never had a single photo. Move my cameras up here into more of Magnum bedroom area. There all the time. I got pictures of him all the time. And so that little difference, I mean, 123 yards, you would think that's not going to make any difference. There's no way that you're not going to be seeing a deer because of 123 yards. Well, at some point, they're only going to go so far one way. They have some little zones where they're comfortable. So I believe that I pay way more attention now to these zones, and I find it to be true a lot more than it's not. So expand your cameras a little bit. Be willing to put another camera on another scrape that's 150 yards away or 200 yards away, instead of thinking you're going to be burning a camera. You might have a completely different deer on there, and it may be a super tanker. The second thing, be trying to get a daylight picture of these deer somewhere in the timber. For me, it was right there. That was the daylight picture I had of him that I feel sealed his fate, because I had that picture on October 8th at 8:45 in the morning. That told me that deer was bedding in there. I knew he was there in daylight, and I knew that we had an opportunity of killing him. On the cameras I had on the field edge, for almost the entire duration of October, with the exception of the 14th, and actually I didn't have a photo of him on the 14th, I just saw him. Not a single daylight photo of him on a field edge. But yet I had multiple daylight photos of him in the timber. So I'd be trying to find something like that in the timber where you can be utilizing that information and know this is near his core area, this is where he's going, this is where he lives, and I'm going to be able to then spend time around it. The third thing I would say is if it's a deer that does live in a small area like that and he's there all the time, you can probably put more pressure on him than you think. Now, I'm not saying you can go and bust him every day and he wins you every day and you can just keep harassing him. But if you bump him once or twice over the course of a week or 2 weeks, you're probably okay. I guess, and maybe the fourth thing I would say is for me personally, if I'm trying to kill one specific deer, I'm going all chips in October and trying to kill them before November 2nd. So hopefully there's something in that information or in that video that helped you guys out. I hope that there's some way that you can apply that. And if you get to this fall, make sure you send us a picture. Would love to hear if you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please leave us a comment and we can make a whole bunch more of these and just go back, because that's the great thing about this is it's just facts. It's not opinions. It's just what we did and what happened and the outcome. So hopefully you guys can apply that to your situation.